Augmented and virtual reality, the future of experiential entertainment. Speaking of AR and VR, I see this person standing right at the back wearing something, I don't know what it's called, and he's been doing throughout the entire last discussion. And so we know that it has always been about the experience. Now, even more than before, experiential entertainment is becoming the new buzz. Now, what is experiential entertainment? What are the new enhanced paradigms it offers? Will experiential entertainment be highly personal, or will it be a new collective viewing experience? This panel focuses on AR and VR and the future of experiential entertainment. So moving on, this panel will be moderated by Mr. Anand Gurnani, founder of VAMMR. The panelists include Clyde Souza, VR filmmaker, Real Vision, Dubai; Chand RK, co-founder and business development director of Digtatales; Hasan Ali Khan, co-founder of Merxius; Chhaya, co-founder of Phygital.
There are, we're talking about the paradigms in entertainment. We know when we look at, just to kickstart this, to give a thought, is when we talk about virtual reality or augmented reality, augmented reality, we talk about things like, say, Pokemon Go. We talk about the educational potential, educational even in what you call serious gaming, or educational for engineering aspects. Potential of augmented reality is very much out there and clear. When we talk about virtual reality, the first thing that comes in is experiential. And most of the times we are talking about either theme park rides or marketing and advertising where it's used effectively, even if it's a gimmick sometimes. But when we talk about entertainment, the entertainment sector, and we talk about VR and AR, pushing the paradigms in the entertainment space, it is still a lot of, there's a lot of open sky to even define what that can be, or even to discover as we go along what that can be. And all of the people on this panel have done some amount of VR in that space. So great to have you here. And we'll start with Clyde, because he's been into stereoscopy for a long time, and then VR, and in the space of VR filmmaking. And then we'll, of course, share with the other panelists as well. So Clyde, you'd like to share about certain examples and case studies where VR in entertainment kind of glues in completely? In entertainment,
yeah.
When we talk entertainment, today when we say entertainment, we go to a movie, it's a collective experience. I won't even talk television too much, because we make for TV, but like most of us don't watch too much TV. And when we talk, say, mobile or portable device-based entertainment, where does VR come into the picture in the entertainment space, and what are the opportunities?
Yeah. First of all, thanks for to all of you who've been here. That means you are the pioneers, along with my fellow panelists out here. What I'd like to say is, we get into filmmaking, we talk about animation. I've been here for the past 3 panels. And for me, the funny thing is that anything that's pioneering is has got like a very laid-back view out here in India. I mean, I can see a lot of people just disappeared now. Because, you talk about mainstream animation, you talk about mainstream filmmaking, and when there's anything new that you want to get into, it's just like, let the West do it first, and then we'll catch up with them. And it's shameful to see all the people out here who went away when they should be looking at the future. Now, with that rant out of the way, let's talk about VR and entertainment. So as most of my fellow panelists know, at least let's say in Hollywood, they are talking about VR, and there's even a term for it now. It's called VR for PR. PR being for films that are coming out. So you got The Martian, 20-minute VR experience. You've got Jungle Book, a VR experience. And they're using it at this stage because we're not acclimatized to using VR headsets for too long. They're building short-form experiences on it, but they are building experiences. And even a big company like IMAX has, understood that probably cinema is going to die out, maybe. So they've tied up with a company called Starbreeze, and they're actually looking at taking IMAX headsets to the home. It's a big plan out there, and a big thing is that going to the movies is a social experience. True, it is true.
It's collective.
Yeah, it is collective experience. But when you put your headset on, the thought is like it alienates you. It does alienate you from, I don't know, from your girlfriend or from your wife. Not such a bad thing all the time, but it is, and vice versa, But it is actually a social experience. Otherwise, Facebook would not be silly to invest $2 billion into it. And why am I saying it's a social experience? Because right now, if you've got a Samsung VR headset and a phone, you can buy a ticket for a movie, a blockbuster film on the Oculus Store, probably $35, maybe $20. But what they don't tell you is you get a license for 4 virtual tickets in that same price. So if I'm sitting out here right now in India and my wife's up in Dubai, maybe we can watch a movie in the evening virtually, where she can be sitting in a virtual theater alongside me, and we're using the same phone to talk to each other. And she can mute me because I go on and on ranting and talking, which you can't do in a theater. In a normal cinema, you can't mute that person who's telling you what happened now, what happened next. But what I'm saying is like Facebook has got this whole plan in mind. You've got your friends list, you've got VR, it's a natural fit, it's going to be social also. So yes, you cannot probably sit and do it live. When you put a headset on, you cannot interact with the person next to you, but virtually you can with anybody else. And probably that's where it's all heading from when we go into virtual. And there's going to be AR now. I mean, there's going to be AR, more mixed reality filmmaking, which is a whole different ballgame, and someone else can take up on that.
Thank you. That was really interesting to, watching movies together virtually. Yes, that's a collective experience.
I think we need to recognize that if we want to bring these technologies into entertainment, it introduces a new paradigm which flips a lot of traditional media on its head. For example, the director loses control, right? In a typical movie, you could control where the audience is looking. You can evoke emotion with music and with sound and with different devices.
You direct the attention to a particular place where you know it's going to be.
Exactly. But in these technologies, you lose that control as a director, as a creative person, where the person is free to explore and interact with that environment. So I think that brings in a completely new paradigm, which opens up, or should open up, a new way of thinking. And if you look on the consumption side, you've had TV screens and flat screens, which have happened for a very long time, almost 100 years. That's how you've consumed media. And now, as a consumer, you have, again, a new paradigm where you can explore and see in a completely different way. So I think trying to supplant these technologies onto what we understand as entertainment today would be doing a disservice, because they're introducing completely new possibilities that we're not even thinking about. So when you talk about how these experiences can be more social, or will they be alienating, I think, in fact, as Clyde has said, these will become more and more social, where together you can travel to a different world, right? So instead of today, where you might put on a headset and have that experience yourself, going forward, it's going to be a bunch of people doing it together and experiencing it in new ways, which I don't think we can even imagine today.
Wonderful. So it's about shared experiences.
Absolutely.
Hemand. So thanks, Hasan. And Hemand, as you know, again, one of the top recognized VR and AR companies in India. Hemand, you've been doing a lot of, I would say, innovative stuff. When it comes to entertainment, what's your input into that?
So my first concern is, at this point of time,
And thanks for this experience that you shared to your...
I haven't yet...
That's a HoloLens.
I haven't even given the experience. So my first concern is, when we are talking about new technologies, trying new technologies and then showing that to people in India, right? So how do we make that happen, right?
Yes.
So we go that extra mile, all of us in the panel and people who work in the space, we go that extra mile, more miles to try and make it happen. So if I have a request for you, even before I answer your question, if I can see this works from here.
Sure.
All that
What do we need here? We need a camera?
He just has to switch on. So in India, we're always, when it comes to innovation, we have very limited support, but the support is growing. But in terms of entertainment, again, in this field of VR, AR, or MR, so I can extend it to MR as well. So, well, firstly, VR, to me, entertainment is personalized these days. So earlier, people have been going to a movie theater to watch a movie, right? Or maybe playing arcade games, in some game bars and things like that. But over the last few years, we have seen technologies culminate to the individual level, to the personal level, right? And then I think it's natural to see VR come up in the future as a source of entertainment for the individual, right?
True. It's logical.
So on that note, so I think from a consumption point of view, it has to be personal, and VR is in the right direction. And as Hasan mentioned, so it will also shift the paradigm of filmmaking, right? So earlier, the director has to just think about a certain field of view in terms of filmmaking, right? Typically about 100 degrees, 50 degrees, or whatever, horizontal and vertical. So now he has to plan for everything around the viewer, right? So he has to get the attention of the user. Not only that, but if it is talking about streaming entertaining experiences over the internet, which is also natural for all the films that are made. In terms of revenue potential, streaming those movies on the internet is another revenue potential for films. So talking about technology requirement for VR films in streaming entertainment, again, there are challenges there where a typical VR film, you can think of it as about 4 times the data that a regular film takes, right? And when we are planning to stream a VR film over the internet, you can assume that it will take 4 times the bandwidth. So that's another challenge. So there are a lot of challenges there in VR.
That brings the concept of big storage along with big data, which it's already there, right?
Right. So, okay, I think I got lost because of the demo sort of didn't work. But so, can you tell me your question again? Any particular question that you have?
The question was about when we are talking about paradigms of entertainment that VR pushes in.
Yeah.
What kind of entertainment experiences are we talking about?
Right.
Because a lot of people here, including myself, when we think entertainment and when we think virtual reality, we know that a lot is possible, but if you've been in it for 10 years, we want to know from you more than what we know.
Well, I would, a lot of things that are possible, but to me, what I see are always challenges which we need to solve.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So that's my perspective in this field.
Okay.
So always we look at maybe a year or 2 years down the lane and then see those challenges about what we can solve. But if you're talking about types of entertainment in the VR side, right? So I mean, we are seeing a lot of VR game bars popping up in China. Last time when I was in China, I was going in Zhengzhou, a city in China. I came across a lot of VR coffee shops, right? So that's a new wave of entertainment that is coming up in VR. I don't see that happening yet in India.
So like an arcade-based VR cafe chain.
Yes.
That people can go spend, say for 30 minutes they get a VR experience for like $5 or $10 or something.
Exactly.
Like that.
Exactly. So that is a market which is coming up, and I'm sure that's a natural extension for all the game zones that we see in all malls and different public places. And in terms of filmmaking, I think Clyde and Hasan has already answered that in terms of the collaboration requirement for films to be popular. But otherwise, to me, entertainment today in VR, is from a worldwide point of view. It's all personal entertainment zones in crowded places. And I think from an India point of view, we'll see that happen. We'll see that happen in a year from now, and I'm hoping to enable people out there to play with counterparts from across the world in a shared virtual world. So that is entertainment to me, which is the next level of entertainment.
Okay, thank you so much.
I think all 3 of them pretty much covered all various aspects of entertainment. Like Clyde said, entertainment is more of a social phenomenon which we look at, but with virtual reality coming in, it's becoming more and more personalized. So it's actually a paradox, right? Because it's going to be a personalized social experience. And what needs to be taken care of is how the content which has been created doesn't kind of get swayed by the technology. I think technology is going to be a medium of delivery. It was there earlier. It's going to evolve.
It's there to service.
It's there to serve, right? But the entertainment is essentially an emotion which comes from within and which is triggered by a particular emotion or out of a content.
Yes. So talking about a mass human experience
Absolutely,
rather than a geeky
absolutely.
experience.
So even when we had something as simple as a pixelated snake game, it was no fancy technology in terms of 3D visuals or something, but it did trigger that excitement. As long as content creators in this space focus on that, not to lose vision of the core essential requirement of the medium, I think technology will enable it and enhance it a bit further. And I was really looking forward to the demo over here.
Chand, you created VR for Stan Lee in animation. Now that's like super wow, right? You've got a showreel for kind of a montage for us to see, and probably you want to show it first, or you want to talk about it first?
Yeah, I think we'll just play what we did. So it's not a reel; it's a compilation.
It's a
from our
montage,
client of
yes.
what exactly happened. Because when the name Stanley comes in, you assume things have happened. It's a very simple thing.
Okay.
So Matt will just play it, and then I can talk a little bit
Yes,
about.
because that's an example of entertainment in VR.
Yes.
Fleeing from their home planet, 7 superpowered fugitives have crash landed on Earth, and yours truly, Stan Lee, has given them shelter. Silver Skylark, Strong Arm, Laser Lord, Lady Lightning, Micro, Kid Kinergy, Roller Man.
So I'll just go through what the project was. It was our first non-PR VR. So we essentially an entertainment studio. We do animation for TV and films, but we, like everyone else, was excited to do something in VR, and we work quite a lot with clients from North America. So we had one of our clients come with Legend VR, which is just a 1.5-year-old VR studio, of a big VFX studio from Hollywood, Legend VFX. So Stanley is, I don't know how many of you guys know about Stanley. So Stanley created, yeah, of course you know him. So he created Avengers series, and he wanted to create a new world or new universe called Cosmic Crusaders, which he had written, and he wanted to launch it at Comic-Con San Diego, the key Comic-Con in July. So Power Entertainment, his company, joined hands with Genius Brand International, which is a big content company, and they wanted to create episodes, normal TV series around it. So along with Legend VR, what we did was we did the entire art. We created the entire comic graphic novels look, and had to come up with an experience for, on the occasion of the 75th year of Stanley's industry experience. I mean, 75 years in the industry, not his age. So, for his 75th year in this industry, they launched it with Hollywood Reporter being the main brand behind it. So, what you just saw was very interesting as a mixture of live action, green screen, VFX, motion comics, and VR. So the final that you saw as an experience was a launch non-PR VR kind of it's a good term. Sorry, I'm going to steal it quite often now. But it was really nice for us to work on something where we helped create these episodes, which are small episodes of 4 minutes, which then Stanley asks you to come sit beside him in the couch and watch the episodes along with him while he tells you the background of each of these characters. That's another opportunity for VR, because it was not possible for you to be sitting with Stanley and doing it. And it's not just that you're doing it. The first phase is just sitting and watching it. The next phase can expand to you going around Stanley and maybe do something, or any other character for that matter. Uh, you can watch it on a platform called Hindsight VR, which is a VR distribution platform. And I feel we had been doing stuff, building solutions or platforms for more marketing or mechanical manufacturing units as such, besides the entertainment side. But what is exciting us as an animation company and a storytelling company is the opportunities that this platform provides, especially in multi-path storytelling. Now, I'm a big geek on multi-path storytelling, where you allow the audience to choose the story in which ways you can. And as a storyteller and a writer, it gives you more depth, both laterally as well as inside of the story, to create stories. It was not possible earlier, but with VR, if you are going to get entertained, because the device gives you the option to choose, so you can now explore as a storyteller. And many directors in Bollywood and especially in South now are excited about using VR as a storytelling medium. I think I had read it somewhere that even Bahubali series is going to extend into a VR universe going ahead. So it's exciting times for animation studios like ours, who wants to use the technology and the platform that people like you make, and see how it can benefit or augment what we have been making. Tell me.
That's the point, that as you were saying, that the multipath storytelling, which is also part of gamification, or as we say, uh, giving the user the choice to tell story. But it also, just since we're focusing as a film in the context of the film market, what challenges does it pose for a director? The word director means someone who's directing not only teams that are producing the entire, but it's somebody who's directing the attention of the viewer to narrative points. Even when you do beauty lighting on a frame in a screen, the lighting artist is directing the gaze of the audience's attention to a spot, and a director is directing the audience's emotion to a particular graph. Now, when you are directing, and Clyde, because you're a VR filmmaker, right? So, and everyone on the panel, right? Directing a scene, directing a film for VR, how different is it from directing a film which is not in a multi-part storyline?
So kind of there is a misconception, let's call it that, that actually, sadly, VR filmmakers itself brought upon themselves, that you cannot cut in a VR film, that you cannot have control over the frame. It's true, you cannot have control over the frame in a traditional sense, but you can, for example, cut in a scene. I called it hijacking the head tracking system, where when you want to make a cut, yes, it's not going to be a nice cut like in a movie right now. It's usually a switch to black. But there are techniques. I mean, if you look back to the masters, you look back to Alfred Hitchcock, and he did, for example, The Rope, which is supposed to be one long take movie. I think it was The Rope. There are things where someone comes in front of you and that blocks out the camera, and there's no reason why at that point you can't cut the film and reorient to where you want the person to look at on the next scene.
A lot of technique.
It's technique in there, but it's interesting technique. Of course, you've got lighting. Lighting is a great cue. And you've got sound, you've got directional sound, because the good thing with a VR headset is you're usually going to have headphones on. So you can direct with sound. So there's all these techniques which have always been used before MTV style cutting became the norm. So yeah, at this point, you don't probably want to do MTV style cutting. You definitely don't want to swing your camera. And which brings me to another point. You know, it's like everyone's learning, including Hollywood. Just last week, I was at Google Dubai doing a workshop for Google's ad agencies. So we did one for JWT, second one was for BBDO. And to them, I showed them how VR being done today is actually damaging to a brand. And the biggest example I put up was, I titled it Suicide in VR because it was a Suicide Squad VR experience. And that one is going to give you a headache. And why? Because you're put into the body of Harley Quinn, one of the main characters in the Suicide Squad, the movie. And it starts off well enough that she's going through, it's like you've got her body on, so they put the camera out there, and you can see yourself swinging around at the bad guys, and you're going straight. And then suddenly, someone decides to pan the camera around, and that will give you a headache because you might be looking right, and they've panned the camera left, and on top of that, it was badly done stereoscopic 3D, so it was all... Now, if Hollywood's making mistakes, here's the good thing to take away from that. India is exactly on the same platform that can upgrade, or you can, supersede Hollywood. There is no thing that they have set a precedent out there.
Same footing.
We're on the same footing. So yeah, it's a great opportunity out there to direct or to come up with terminology, to come up with workflows that actually set the pace going forward of how to direct, how to create a VR film. And I believe that, yes, so to direct a VR film, you can direct it. You can come up with new ideas that have probably not been explored because the language is still coming up.
Right, thanks. You're working with a Telugu producer on a VR film, right?
Yeah.
Could you talk about that, Hasan?
It's actually a very short promo right now. It's for a concept that they're working on, and this is actually going to be used in their pitch. So I'm not sure how much I can disclose, but the idea is that there are people even here who are really excited about the potential, and as Clyde has mentioned, we are all learning in this together. So the issues with, for example, panning the camera or rapid motion, these are things which we are learning, and in fact I'd say in some cases innovating along or faster than the West. At this point, the most I can say is that it's a couple of months away, and it should be something really exciting.
When it comes to duration, right? When like you look at festivals now, a lot of festivals have a VR section, and of course you won't have hundreds of entries. You have 3, 5, and that gets celebrated. But you have a lot of room-based VR. So it's basically you go into a room, you wear your headset, you need some space to move, and you get some haptic feedback that adds a lot, and then you experience something like a giant movie that was about the war in Eastern Europe and made a lot of ripples for the kind of real feel of war anyone got by being in it. But when we, again, you pointed out about that, don't treat it like how you think entertainment now, because the future of entertainment will be totally different, and it need not be a 75 or a 90-minute feature in VR. But is that also a possibility, or that's like a total no? Is that a dumb question?
Well, HTC Vive, for instance, right?
Yeah.
So that works on the basis of position and orientation tracking. Well, for something like that to happen, it needs a lot more in terms of infrastructure, right? Well, we've all seen motion capture films. Like, for example, this whole setup seems to be something which you will record and then make us look that we were in some sort of a larger auditorium later, I hope.
I hope as well.
Well, cut the green screen, right? So now with position and orientation trackers that can be installed in a room like this, we can enable the user, the viewer, to be truly a part of the VR experience that he is in. Which means, when I say truly a part of the VR experience, so maybe he wants to get closer to an actor who is in the scene. and maybe he wants to talk to him, right? So that's a little far-fetched right now in terms of filmmaking. We're using a regular cameras, but using appropriate, CG, CG-based renders, realistic characters, with VFX and all that, it is quite possible where you could use a mix of, a real camera-based render and a CG-based render, and enable the viewer to walk inside the environment. So that's when I would imagine this to be a path-breaking experience, which replicates the sort of experience that we see in in horror setup zones, probably in Ramoji, right? Ramoji, I remember I was a part of this 4D or 5D room where I was in, and I was freaked out. So, but this can be replicated through easy to set up position and orientation tracking controllers using HTC Vive. Currently, we are using it for industrial applications. The other thing that I wanted to point out at this juncture is, in making a VR film, right now, majority of the VR films that are made with a stationary camera, right? With a stationary camera, and action happens all around the camera.
Yeah, so there's no rig or movement of the camera.
Yes.
There.
So that is the biggest challenge today, to me, in terms of VR filmmaking, and I'm sure some of people agree here. And of course, the second part is lighting, right? So I mean, right now the camera is positioned at us, but let's say there was supposed to be a 360 camera right there, right? So that lighting setup will also fall in the scene, right? That sort of screws the storytelling in a little bit. So which means you need to have like high-end cameras and high-end lenses, which will also work with just the natural lighting, right? So talking about that limitation, there are certain companies, including ours, who are working in the space of creating a tele-robotic platform, which would enable the director to move the camera around in the scene, right? And the output is, it's just a floating camera all around, right? Right now it could be, I mean, it is being done right now on a drone.
So it's a 360 version of a pan and zoom.
Yes. 360 version of a pan and zoom. Yes. Yeah. So I mean, the photographer can now move around, close to a subject, or backward and all that. Right now, there was an interesting experience that I just saw at the first booth. The gentleman who is from, I don't know if he's here, who is from Hong Kong, Leslie, I think is his name. So he showed me a film where they made a 360 film, where to somehow make this happen, like the moving shot, right? So what they have done is they have come up with a script which includes an umbrella which covers the camera, and underneath the umbrella there could be an actual physical person who has this umbrella with the rig, and he's like moving around. It could pretty much be that, right? So they catered the script in such a way that they could move the camera around using an umbrella. So I pointed at him, why is the umbrella there? I couldn't hear the audio. He said it's a part of the script. It's the umbrella, coming towards every actor, and that's how they made it happen.
Right. So there's a lot of innovative ways to look at doing that. Talking about AR, right? So now when, of course, like Pokemon Go kind of hit that threshold that now we all know AR and entertainment, interactive entertainment is like, there's no debate to that. But when we talk about AR, essentially it seems more educational in its first use case. So, but when we talk AR and entertainment, besides being thrilled with some basic AR, and okay, that's kind of, it shows us markers of potential. But well executed final AR entertainment products that you could talk about to us, that you've seen, that could be references.
I think my experience comes more from a gaming perspective.
Yes. Gaming is entertainment.
Gaming is entertainment, right? So a lot of game developers are now experimenting with enhancing the user experience using AR. I was looking at our first-person shooter game, something like Call of Duty, and so this is a game which is paintball meets Call of Duty. So people are using augmented reality as a team-building exercise in paintball tournament, but with AR. So you suddenly hold up the phone to you, and I see you in combat gear, and I have a gun, and I can kind of shoot you.
Right.
So the simulation kind of gets enhanced in that sense.
Yes.
So I think AR is definitely there from educational, yes. I mean, we are doing a few educational projects in that space, right from early learning to medical simulations, but pure gaming as well. I think, yes, Pokemon Go did put it on the main
Everyone
map.
knew about it, kind of, yes.
But even before Pokemon Go, right? I mean, and this is way back in 2005, 2006, there's a Symbian game called Mosquitoes. And it was there on the Nokia 6600, and all you had to do was switch it on and the camera came on, and you could see mosquitoes going around, and you had to just zap it. So it's all actually how you can creatively implement AR, and not as a force fit, but more as a creative enhancement to your game design. Because the game design experience will remain the same. I mean,
again, as you're pointing out earlier, about first you said about evoking the emotion. Now you're saying it's a design decision.
Yes, it is a design
and
decision.
It's led by design.
Not,
it's
not
not
everything
the
can be
other
made
way.
an AR product or a VR product.
If
malls, even
Okay.
experience centers, which is entertainment again.
So
you
AR,
were, so this was way before
So
Google.
it's like mixed. It's like with a glass.
It's mixed reality. So it was even before Google Glass was there. So what the Japs could do at that time, and I had seen it in one of the malls, is you go in and it's like experiencing a hologram. So you have a dancing girl on the stage, like with the music, because everything comes with the K-pop experience over there.
Yes.
Is only when you wear it. When you remove it, it's a normal stage or some brands, just a kiosk. So people would throng for a virtual concert of the character
on an empty stage.
an empty stage or a branded thing. So you are just replacing the screen with an experience which is an screen there. And because that character would be well known, then and you have glasses in the audience, then the audience would come in, wear those glasses, have the experience, pay for the tickets or buy the brand, whichever, depending on whether it's a sponsor or not, and go away. Now, that existed in a very techie way for small ways in the Japanese market, which through AR now, I guess, could become more mainstream, whether it is for a marketing or for an entertainment space.
Right. So it's just like you going on the beaches of Goa and everyone having a headset, wireless, dancing to different music, but here you're watching
really,
different
It's not really
concerts.
headset, it's more mixed reality. So
No, I meant, as an example, you're wearing wireless headsets, so you're dancing to different feeds of music. And here, when you're looking at a plain stage, you switch on the concert of Arijit or Rahman or Coldplay. That depends on what you want.
So the closest that we can get to over here is if you go to those discotheques where there is no loud music and speakers, you have your own headphones and dance.
Yeah, that's
so
what I was saying.
it's very closer to the similar sensibilities.
I would say if you will actually want to talk to the audience out here who might be interested in filmmaking, I believe most of you are, and if you're talking about an AR in entertainment, one of the best demos I saw of the HoloLens was actually a kind of a, let's call it, it's not a game, but it could be a game and an adventure movie, where in your apartment you put the headset on, the Microsoft HoloLens, and you actually see a murder mystery play out on your floor in your room. And the sense of kind of what got to me the wow moment was, when you're feeling threatened, like the guy in the demo itself says, when someone is opening up your door and threatening you, that takes AR and like a virtual experience to a whole new level. So you could start off a production, which is actually a VR film shot on green screen, and you can composite in the background, and you've got a VR movie. Now take it off and put it onto the HoloLens, and then you've got those actors in there, in your room, playing out a movie like a murder, or even a dramatic piece can be done right at your dining table. So if you see Alfred Hitchcock's 12 Angry Men shot for the HoloLens, you'd see 12 people arguing at your dining table, and you're the bystander out there. So now you don't have to really use the HoloLens. You could even see it through your cell phone. So the platforms are there. I guess from a commercial point of view, it would be like, why am I getting into this new media thing? because you can actually cross different mediums, there is distribution. It's just about getting, taking the step in pioneering storytelling to the next level from normal filmmaking. So that's one area of AR that I liked, besides the normal stuff that you see. You open a page and you see a dancing object, and that's like AR that was being done, believe me, in 2001.
Yeah, and that's kind of
That's a gimmick that was
serving a particular gimmick, marketing gimmick purpose that marketing
when we
industry
talk about
requires. Yeah,
how could it be in filmmaking, then
Yes.
AR in that is one good idea, actually.
Yes. And then again, when we're talking in the entertainment space as the topic, along with filmmaking, which is entertainment, but sports, concerts, and does the panel have anything to share? We know we know that live concert VR or live sports VR is awesome, but any examples that you want to talk about? Or
There's a company called Grey Matter Entertainment who primarily does the the wheel rigs on the cricket matches or the soccer matches that you see, or they shoot stereo IPL matches or badminton Premier League. It's done by a friend, but we've been talking now. But there's a scope over there where you want to lock. I mean, it is big in EPL now, I guess. When in European Premier League, you can just wear your VR set and be part of a live streaming match. In entertainment space, there are now attempts more for sponsored, smaller segment promotional efforts rather than a fully fledged experience of a complete virtual experience in it. But I just sat through a half an hour. I don't know if you know about the Burning Man festival in the desert. So in Nevada, they actually had a complete live for the 5 days. If you are interested, you could just be wearing your and you would be there through your VR.
And you could subscribe to your Samsung Gear VR.
It was a free thing, so I didn't have to subscribe. But people just want it to make a way that you can reach out. So the same thing can extend to any festival. It could be a religious festival, it could be a music festival, it could be anything, I guess. So options are there.
You brought up sports, so I'd just like to throw in a tidbit. So NBC, the channel in the US, they were the sole broadcasters for the Rio Olympics. They broadcast around 100 hours of content in virtual reality. And they got, I believe, 1 million views over the period of the Olympics. The takeaway from there being that their profits just from the Olympics were $250 million when they had predicted roughly 150 million. So that bump of 100 million, they don't know yet if it's pure from VR or from something else, but there has been some contribution.
And we spoke about this, but let's talk about headsets and let's talk about the gap yet. I mean, of course, that's the first time I'm seeing a HoloLens in live, but most headsets are very clunky. They are irritating, and they are actually bad in experience just by the fact that they are a weight on your head or your nose. And we are talking experiential here, right? We are talking immersiveness, where the first thing that distracts you is the headset itself. What do you have to say as an evangelist?
As much as I like Google Cardboard for democratizing the whole system out there, what Google probably has not, or they have realized, but they're not talking about, is the fact that you're putting in your iPhone or you're putting in your normal phone in there, and you're relying on the gyro of that phone to give you head tracking, which is definitely going to give you some kind of latency and lag. Now, the reason why the Samsung Gear VR works is because, first of all, the IMU, the tracking device, is in the headset, and secondly, Samsung gave Oculus access to the hardware of the phone, bypassing the whole Android system, and that's why you get no latency and it's a perfect experience. But having said that, of course, there are a lot of headsets coming out. The Chinese are not doing us any favors by actually putting knockoff headset out there without the tracking device in there or without anything and passing it off. In fact, in Dubai, I was surprised. I walked around in one of the Carrefour markets and it says Gear VR. And it's of course a ripoff, but it's not Gear VR, but they're riding on that thing. But the headsets are getting lighter. The next version of the Samsung Gear VR is a lot more lighter than it. And guess what? Like when I was, the flight was delayed coming in from Dubai, and I had my Gear VR with me. And when you got like 2 hours to kill out there, and your laptop, the laptop that I carry on needs a charger, it just dies out. So I didn't have the laptop. So I just put on the Gear VR, and I had some movies downloaded. And it's a great way to to pass your time, to kill your time in there. So long as you're not putting a Note 7 in there, which is bound to explode in your face, apparently. But yeah, it's something that you'll carry with you. And when it comes to things like the other headsets, like the Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive, we have to realize that there is a generation gap, which means the newer, like the kids or the young teens, and they're gaming for hours in it. No one's complaining. I do complain that, yeah, if I have the Oculus Rift on, it will leave a whole kind of mark around you, and it gets tiring. But these guys are gaming for hours, and yeah, if your content in a movie is good enough, I'm sure they'll watch it. So it will probably affect us, but it is, to the younger crowd, I don't think it's much of a deal.
You're getting emotional here about it.
I just wanted to add in a tidbit. So what we do at our company is anytime we have a doubt if people can understand it, I take it to my grandmother. And I make her experience it, and if she gets it, then it's a go-ahead. So I got her to try the Gear VR, and in 10 minutes she was really tired and disoriented. But what we found is while working with real estate and VR using the HTC Vive, people are able to go 20-25 minutes without a problem. But beyond that, I think the age kicks in, and younger people are able to go on for a longer time.
Well, I think every headset, I mean, there are a lot of types of headsets. I was just talking to a friend regarding the types of headsets available. So there are headsets available from about $50 to all the way about $800 or even beyond, right? So there is a headset for every purpose, right? You define your target market, define what you want to achieve with your target market, and you can right now optimize on the headset. But yeah, I think the other point is headsets probably are not going to be gone, right? Because it's still going to be something that you have to wear. But
when we see this, it looks much lighter
Yeah.
than you would considering an Oculus or a Samsung Gear VR. And while we can definitely defend and say it's for the younger people and make us feel old, and make us feel old.
just hold it. This is actually not
Right?
lighter. It's still,
But the whole point is that I think the device industry has to improve its act.
Yeah. So,
The technology has to improve its act, because
so I have a few
we
points
can't
on
just
that.
say that it's for younger people and alienate half.
Well, LG hasn't yet released his product, I think, but they have demonstrated a new kind of a headset at MWC in Barcelona in Feb. So where they took away the phone from the headset, the need to have a phone inside the headset, which is what Google promoted. And yeah, everyone realized that, well, this is awesome. It has a gyroscope and everything. It can immediately be a part of the experience, but it is heavy, right? After a few minutes, it gets quite cumbersome, and if the script is not good enough, no one is going to watch it. So LG came up with this concept that, hey, that you could attach a cable, USB cable to your phone, and the sensor also, the device also has a sensor like Gear VR. So they borrowed some tech from Gear VR, and it is lightweight. It's about 1/3 the weight of a Gear VR plus the phone, right? So, but that's still not released. They have their own downsides. But the point is, I think we will pretty soon see lighter, better tech in headsets. We are getting there. The good point is all the companies, all the manufacturers, all the software giants are working in this space. Pretty soon we may see some optical lenses, which everyone will have, which will create a zero weight VR experience.
That's awesome.
I actually showcased that in Tokyo a few weeks ago.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, just a really light headset, which was just a few 100 grams more than your normal glasses.
So then I'm no longer alienated again, right?
Do you remember how the first laptops were?
Yes.
And the size of the laptops now? So I guess,
Yes.
yeah, even PC. So laptops are more or less obsolete now. So I guess with more and more content coming in, again I'm coming back to the point that irrespective of the device, if the content consumption target is there, they will choose the device. Even heavy, not at all a concern, because the gaming guys are fine with it, because they wanted more graphics, more heavy stuff, which cannot be provided maybe as of now with a lighter headset thing. And I agree to what Hasan said, that if you go to the potential big market of real estate now, we face the same issues in developing experience
Because
centers
again,
that-
real estate is enterprise, but since we're talking
no,
entertainment is consumer.
but they are not the end users. It's a point of sales product. So it is, in the end, it's going to the layman who's going to use it to see it, and beyond certain point, a normal wife or a grandmother or a cousin might just find it too cumbersome to watch it. Just say, मेरे को side plan देखना है. I don't want to see it through this. Then we lose out on the mix.
We'll open it up to the audience before we kind of wrap the panel. And Ninad, you have
Just one point
Yeah, sure.
adding to this. I think it's a combination of both technology and exposure to a new platform. For example, if you remember the first time man saw a feature film, right? When people were sitting in France and watching a feature film of a train coming at them,
yes.
they panicked,
Yes.
right? Computer games. When people started playing Doom, it created a new genre of illness called Doom-induced motion sickness, right? Because people were still new to the whole concept. But we evolve. The best part, the good part or bad part about us as humans is we evolve. And I think
We adapt.
We adapt and we evolve. And like Hemand was saying, it could just be implantable contact lenses down the line. There could be no headset. It could just be a contact lens which we wear and just be able to experience the whole thing what we are using with a HoloLens. Matter of time.
It's a matter of time. But so we are not early. We are on time.
We are on time.
That's what I wanted the audience to.
Hi, first of all, thanks to this opportunity, because on hearing this session, I thought I just came to know that there's a whole new universe out there, this VR technology. So coming to film industry, I think VRizing film industry will be like making taste biryani like ice cream. Now, it's just my point, I don't know, it's before anything. Let's take a scene. It's a war scene. There's a mother running from the camera to take, finding or searching for her child. So in a conventional movie, we'll take a close-up, we'll take a long shot for establishing the scene. We'll show some shots detailing the destruction. We'll take a close-up of the searching mother. We'll show some other angle, depending on the director's vision or whatever it is, and use some background music to convey the exact feel. What the director wants, what the audience wants. To establish an idea that the director wants to convey. So when we come to VR, how can we, I'm not much experienced with VR, so is it possible to convey something similar experience that the creator wants to the viewer using VR technology?
It's one of the standard questions you'd get from a director who wants to do it, but says, okay, so guide me. And it's the same like how it was in stereoscopic 3D filmmaking before that. There were some directors and some cinematographers who wanted to learn new things. There were others who were very rigid about how it should be done. The good thing is that currently there are a whole crop of new filmmakers of new generation who want to listen, who want to experiment and learn. To answer your question, I could see a couple of ways of doing it. One is if you actually run you can move the camera, by the way. The problem arises somewhat is in accelerating and decelerating the camera. That's when you kind of get that little, stomach churning effect if you start accelerating it at that point. So if you cut into a scene where the camera is traveling, let's call it being on rails. It's like we are on rails, and if you're following the camera as the mother is running to the child out there, if you start the scene with that, you can follow her, and now it's up to the person whether they want to see the mother or they want to look around, but you will not get sick with that. So you could definitely do that. The other great stuff is that you can really get up close as you end up there to bring the child's face close up to you or the person, and that's the emotion connect that you cannot get with traditional cinema as much as you feel that you're in that place. You can also do a cut, which is you can cut, but it'll be kind of like usually like an eye blink to the next scene. As my colleague out here mentioned, we are evolving, and pretty soon it won't be. You could probably accelerate and decelerate also. It's very fast that we are evolving in this space. But right now, if you want to cut and you just cut to black and you position the next scene in there, brilliant, it will work. I mean, I've used jump cuts like this in. I've done a 9-minute film back in 2015. It's called Dirigate, and at that time, literally within the span of 1 year, there was nothing. There was no post-production software. There was no cameras for me to use, so I had to jerry-rig to Ricoh Theta cams, and I had to take still photographs because even then Ricoh only had a still photograph camera. Now they came up with a video version of it, so this was back in 2015. And so Dirigate is out there. You can actually see it on Samsung invited me to put it up on Samsung VR. It's the only indie film alongside The Martian, alongside Disney's Jungle Book and stuff. So I'm pretty happy about that part. But it uses these kind of cuts in there, and no one has said anything about it, disorienting them. And I have used one scene where you're zooming through, and I had to slow down, so I used something to mitigate that effect of the deceleration by using like a camera flash. So yes, I had the liberty of actually adding a camera flash kind of thing into the script. But if a director or a cinematographer or a storyteller actually looks at leveraging the limitations of VR to their advantage, they can produce good stuff like this, which will not detract too far from traditional directing or storytelling point of view.
In addition to that, one more thing. We can use VR for post-production, I mean pre-production works also, right? So nowadays we are using storyboards, we are using clay models, we are using all those stuffs.
Yeah.
Instead of that, we can, so for example, let's say a production designer wants to design something, he can use a VR and design a model. He can show it to the director whether he likes it or not. So
it's actually a great way for scoping out shots. If you want to use it for 2D filmmaking and you want to use this in previs, yeah, capture a whole space and then you can actually reframe shots from there. Which brings up another interesting point, that if you actually, as a new filmmaker now, look at capturing a space in stereoscopic 360 at 4K or 8K, which is what you get by default in VR, there's nothing to stop you from extracting, there's software that does that, to extract a 2K frame. I mean, let's put this into perspective. Avatar was released in cinemas at HD quality. Yeah. So here you've got 4K, you've got 8K, you can pan and scan and produce a 2D version or a 3D movie version of that film, yet you're future-proof to the point where headsets are then out there in the open. And also, you can still run it on the iPad. Right now you go through Facebook and chances are you see a photograph, and at least I always have this habit of trying to spin it and get very disappointed when I can't spin it anymore. But it's, so yeah, very, very evolving.
Do you mind if I take this a little forward? Do you mind if I get a little animated? Is that okay? Okay, so I'm very glad you brought this up. Now imagine that same scene that you brought up of the war, right? You put on a headset, and instead of you sitting here, what if you get up and here is the mother with the child? You can go up to them and you can see those emotions up close, and then you can walk and then you see the war happening around you. How does that change your filmmaking compared to what you have right now?
No, I'm just saying the method of expression. It's like reading
go up to them and see what they're doing.
No, just like reading a book and watching a movie is different, right? So cinematic storytelling and VR storytelling is different. Let's not make it together. Instead, let's use the VR for making this one. Let's not make Kathakali look like some other art form, right? Let's the conventional old school cinema like that. We can use the VR technology in the pre-production or making a better film, and we can use the same thing for parallelly, like VR storytelling is a different thing.
Yeah,
and
so that's the choice the director will take, right?
And I'm just saying it.
I think that will answer pretty much all your questions, because Google has used the best of the animation directors to make around 6 completely 360 VR animated films, which uses this technology but has the traditional animation 2D films in there. So that might answer.
So, and I hope Hemand can bring, because I'd love him to take over on an MR version if you're here for the thing. So we'll talk a lot about the questions on film production at that workshop.
It's not a question. I'll be just sharing few of the things in the VR perspective. In earlier my days, I used to call the headset as the helmets. In VR, there are 4 defined kind of segment. One is helmet, which you call nowadays the headset. Another is cave system. Another is boom tube. And the 4th one is without anything, with the acupressure point, you are experiencing the whole thing. The latest development that happened in the VR segment, without the helmet, there is a chip which has been developed. You insert the chip into your specs, and the spec becomes your headset. That happened. Regarding the latest development, things happened where you can imagine a system where you don't have any gun in your hand, you're not wearing anything, you're inside a cave, you'll have a augmented reality generated gun, which is not there in the market. You're experiencing that, your enemies are in front of you, and you are getting the exact recoil that is there. It's not easy, it's really tough.
Haptic feedback.
Yeah, you have that recoil in your hands and all, right? And then there is another kind of system which we are under NDA, but I can always share the thing, where, yeah, I can't share the technology, but yes, it's like where we can bring out the brain of a live person with 0.5 millisecond gap on the top of the table, and a doctor can do the operation before doing the operation, and the system will tell whether he is doing right or wrong. And after that, the doctor is actually doing the real operation. So those things already is there in the market, and things are evolving. Regarding making the VR films, I'd like to ask the panelists, are we talking about making VR film, or you're talking about making 360-degree movie? I mean, and where is the difference there in India itself for the other people who are willing to make the VR film and the 360-degree film itself? I'm inside the movie itself, but I cannot interact. Okay. But if I am interacting, that becomes a VR movie itself.
Sure.
Yeah. So
VR is all about immersion, interactivity, and
True.
ideally force
True.
feedback as well.
True.
Right. So right now, when YouTube has released so-called, well, they didn't say VR videos, but everyone referred to whatever they've released as VR.
Yeah.
Right. 360 videos.
Yeah.
But I think it needs a combination of hardware as well.
True.
When it comes to force feedback, let's say, or if it comes to interactivity, it's just a matter of creating touch points for every scene, every area in the scene, so that once you sort of maybe use a gaze-based detection, or maybe use Gear VR click, and then you suddenly the guy who is sort of idle, in a puzzle, right, in a crime story, right, and you interact with him and he immediately talks to you. So there are technologies which will enable you to do it. But there are two types of storytelling. One is the VR, it needs a new way of storytelling. But the point that the other guy mentioned, right, which is, I think he was referring to the regular movie, take it and being taken to a 360 video format,
True.
like an immersive
True.
view. So there, the storytelling, I think he's expecting the user to get an immersive experience, which is threefolds to the regular viewing experience, but probably not yet interaction, right? So he was talking about challenges there in terms of how that can be made happen. The other thing what Hasan talked about is interaction within the scene.
True.
So that is a new way of creating cinema, right? Where you gotta create new experiences, where you engage the user inside the cinema. So, well, both are possible, different thoughts, but for the VR film to happen, it needs good technology support as well. It can't be just a video that gets played.
Because what's happening right now, for example, again, I'm taking back to the BBDO ad agency workshop I've done for them. So you've got clients coming up, and like a client like Etihad Airways has spent, I think it's over $1 million. I can't be sure on it. On I call it a 360 ad with Nicole Kidman in there, and it is being marketed as a VR ad. Now, there's a big difference between someone sticking 4 cameras like GoPros and shooting this room and saying it's a VR version, versus someone stereoscopically shooting this room. As a base minimum for VR, my definition is that you need to experience depth, some kind of depth. So now, for example, Etihad wants to show you the first class cabin they're calling apartment living. I can't afford to fly first class on Etihad. At least I could experience it by putting a headset on, that whole comfort but I can't, because that's video wallpaper to me. It's video on the insides of a globe where there's no sense of scale. And there's a lot of videos out there calling themselves VR, where people look 20 feet tall, the table looks 10 feet tall, because you can't tell depth. So at minimum, it has to be stereoscopic 360 to qualify for VR. The next thing, of course, is what I call audience agency, giving them agency, which means they can move around. Now, 2 areas to actually produce VR films would be game engines. So, the common ones right now are Unreal Engine and the Unity engine, and you can actually make a full film in that traditional film with a timeline, with audio. In fact, that's what I'm going to be talking about and showing and learning from audiences on the 27th. We're doing the 4-hour workshop. So we'll be talking about game engines being used for a full narrative VR film, and I hope to learn equally from the audience as well. But that is VR, where then you can walk up, and how would you mix and match? That's where green screen comes in. So you can shoot an actor in green screen, put them into the game engine out there, if you want a human action or a human emotion coming, yes, you film it like you do, you put it in the game engine, but the user can walk up to that person or can walk up to a animated version of a character and experience a different thing. And so that's what a VR film probably is. How would you get a real world location in there? So photogrammetry is there. There's LiDAR, where you can actually bring a set in. There's new cameras like the Lightro now, which are giving you full motion, 24 or 30 frames per second capture of a volumetric data set. So you can actually see action, like, if you've got plants moving in the wind, that can be captured, actors can be captured. And that's where we're heading with VR filmmaking. The great thing is, once you've got this, let's call it a digital set, you're free to use it again and again and again, in a 2D movie. So if you go and digitize something, let's say the Bahubali set, which I've been trying my best to get to do it, but they said no way. But yeah, if you capture that set, you can use it again and again, even if it's knocked down. Everything is digital now. You've got a digital set in there to use in your next VR film or your normal 2D film.
Is it possible for only just a mere filmmaker, who is only a filmmaker, who understands the storytelling, to make an interactive VR film without the support of a guy who is a technical guy, who understands the interactivity and the game coding? Because in earlier days, we used to use VRML. Nowadays, the coding structure has been changed.
I'm using the Unity game engine, and I do not write a single line of code. So there are visual ways of doing it. There are plugins, and I'll be showing all that. Where someone who's familiar with Adobe Premiere, there's like a Unity plugin that does this kind of nonlinear cutting of the video, of the audio. And the interesting part would be getting interactions, like, do you really want that door to open? It's a matter of actually just clicking. It's not genius stuff, and I don't write a line of code. But yes, you can do that. To answer your question, yes, you can make a film like that without having to write code.
Or are we just banking on adapting as a species and banking on evolution to take over more powerful eyesight? A. B, quick question. I think as an add-on to a question which was just asked, when we say VR or virtual reality, I just got this thought that reality is made up of, say, our 5 senses or maybe a 6th sense. Are we focusing too much on the visual sense, and probably the second in line is our audio senses, and not much on the others? Because, for example, if I'm in a scene of a film and it's a murder scene, and I can see and I can go closer to the prime actor, the character, but if I'm sitting in my room and I can smell my mom's food and or it's too cold, I don't have that integrated experience anyway.
So basically, you're talking about the suspension of disbelief that is important for transporting us into any story, even if you're reading a book. And the hardware-based immersive, which is not about suspension of disbelief, but that's your question.
We're focusing a lot on headsets and eye and vision and then maybe audio and how the audio can actually show the depth. And we spoke of depth. What about the other senses to make it a holistic experience? Just a question.
Tell you that since these technology, I think it's called Oculus or Olifris or something like that, the sense of smell device thing. But it's there. It's just that probably at this point, if you look at a normal film, yes, you are emotionally involved in it. You get caught up in the story. One, because the story is good. Now, in VR, what that's giving you is it's giving you, let's say, kind of an amplified version of that, along with positional audio. For example, there is something called ASMR, which is it's a kind of feeling that you get. The full thing of it, where just hearing sound, you can actually feel, like the hairs on the back of your neck stand up and stuff. And you got access to that now, which you did not have in a cinema. Even if it's a Dolby Atmos cinema, you cannot get that intimate sense of sound and stuff like that, which you can use in VR. Have audio, you're already up there two levels with the senses. Of course, the caveat is right now, the VR headsets themselves do not have that resolution. So you're watching basically mud if it's a medium close-up or if it's a long shot. But it's getting better, and you can go close up and you can see expressions. The thing that came to mind was the latest Obama video that Felix and Paul Studios. By the way, if you're into VR, I always promote these people, the studio based in Canada. It's like the gold standard for filmmaking in VR. So they've done some really great experiences. The first one I saw was just called Strangers, where this guy, you're in his room, you're sitting on a stool, and he's playing the piano next to you. And you feel that you are there. At least I felt that I was there, listening to him playing the piano, smoking a cigarette, and that's all he does in that 5-minute piece. But the latest one they've done was with Obama at the Yosemite National Parks tour. And I always use this now as an example. So, in real life, you're never going to get close to President Obama. So he's talking to a guide about that far from the camera. And at one point, unscripted, he looks at the camera to ask a question, and it's like he's talking to you. And that's the kind of like that presence that they all say that you want in VR. It happens. You get that sense of presence that he's there. It's for a brief second. But if I saw that even on a cinema screen, I know that he's looking at the camera or something like that. But here, he's talking to you. So it does heighten, and you can use VR to heighten the experiences without having to connect with all 5 senses at one point. Of course, haptics is going to be good. And I would say that would stray into an area where you probably have VR bedroom videos or something. But by the way, the ecosystem, when you say about content, that's a great area that's been missing out, because the cameras are coming. Samsung's got these little cameras and stuff like that. And yes, I'd love to capture my son's first steps, or his first words, or his 5th birthday, and then watch it in VR 10 years later or 15 years later. Basically, you've captured a sense of life, a slice of life in its full fidelity to watch in virtual reality. And that's a great thing that you cannot do probably with LiDAR, because there's a big argument about it's not VR unless you can interact with it, because that's the dictionary definition of what VR was, that you have to interact with it. But how do I capture like the Nepal earthquake and stuff like that? I can't create a stone that was there in VR, in a CG modeling package. I want to capture live. But if it's captured stereoscopically, that's the next best thing you can do until you get these Lightro cameras out there. So yeah, there's a lot of content out there that you can do.
So this is in the Silicon Valley. I don't know if they've done it anywhere else. So basically what they do is they have a rig where you lie down, and they strap you, they lift you up, they have a frame, they have fans on all sides, and you put on a VR headset. And what you do is you flap your hands. And as you flap, you start flying, right? And the fans come on at different points to give you a sense of wind, right? So this is a really immersive experience, which brings in the third sense that we're talking about, right? So this is completely possible, and people are working on it, and this is happening. With feedback, I believe now they're integrating haptic sensors, which are really small. You just put them onto your body, they vibrate at the appropriate time, and then make you feel like you're feeling wind resistance. So this is the next step that I know they're working on. Maybe they'll get odor also, I don't know.
Yeah, odor is already
no,
there.
but these people for flight, yeah.
A friend of mine has a company with the order. I mean, he has this device which can be plugged onto your PC or even your mobile phone, and it has like 5 cartridges. So you can if you want really, really bad smell, have bad cartridges, right? They can sell how many ever cartridges that you want. So it is a concoction of all these cartridges, which the app will control and then emit, whenever you're in that particular scene. That's
and this kind of ties back to the question that you asked first about the medical repercussions. What people have found is that just the sense of sight and hearing, if you are able to confuse the brain, people get so immersed in some environments. Like for example, the real estate demo that I'm talking about, people forget that they are there. They try to reach out for a door, or try to touch something or sit down on a table. That in itself is enough to cause a deep sense of immersion. But having said that, people don't want to try to add on more unless we completely understand. For example, odor. How does the body react if there is a disconnect between all of these different senses when you're simulating them, when you're not actually experiencing them? Suppose there's a lag. What happens when you smell something 3 seconds later? When you watch a video and there are subtitles, if they're 2 seconds out, you tend to get uncomfortable. So it's the same experience, but this is visceral. This is your body that you are messing around with. So how does that change? So I know there is a university in Belgium which is doing the study on this. How deeply can you immerse till the point where people get... exactly, yeah. So this is the uncanny valley. I guess we could go into technical, but yeah.
The rig, the VR headset, with something to track them, just to show what life can become if there is a lag. So it is primarily an ad for the speed of internet, but it's a lovely ad. Just search it out on YouTube and you'll see that how in real world people do get confused between the immersed, because what they do is they're just wearing the headset and there is a camera up front which shows the real world. So it's more like a mix of AR and VR. So they goof up in everything, including making an egg batter poach or pouring coffee, because there is a lag. There's a lag in the speed, and the brain does not recognize that. So I think it'll get too kinky if we go getting into having all the senses into a haptic virtual world, besides what the commercial interest is as of now.
So basically, two VR headsets that a man and a woman put on. So the man sees the woman's body, the woman sees the man's body, and they try to interact with that body and how that messes with the brain. That's a really interesting video. The second one is Lefty. So what that does is you use your right hand, but in VR you see your left hand. So how does that confuse the brain? These are two really interesting experiences I guess you could find on YouTube.
Yeah, and I don't agree with Chand because I think immersive karna hai to pura hona chahiye. Just I am, of course.
It's done.
No, I'm talking about the mother. If his mother is missing her child, and they want to communicate.
I think we can have a long discussion after.
I think stick around for the workshop.
Yeah, okay. So, thank you for the considering my question.
So it's been very interesting, and I think we could do a couple of more hours, but I don't know, they might just shut the lights on us and we'll have no VR to assist us outside. Last question, and then we have a small video message from the Awesome Game Studio, Rajat Oja.
Yeah, I want to ask that, maybe this is also addressed before, but just to, can VR actually become a different art form altogether, different from the films? Because
it
not
is.
just,
It is.
with all this,
It already is.
because like the question was, because the gaming thing, there's also someone said that it's also the extension of filmmaking, because all the art thing that happens is between the cutscenes where there are just videos. So how exactly can it be a different art form with all this technology?
Like photography is an art form, but it's used for filmmaking, which was earlier being only books or reading.
Yeah, exactly. Different art form, like the
Because you can
photography
use it in every field. And it's not only art, it's also science. Right? So you use virtual reality for medical and health. Like you talk about taking a brain out and doing an operation. Use virtual reality for tourism. Use virtual reality for infrastructure. You use it for education. You use it for architecture, automotive. So you're simulating. Basically, you are the word virtual reality. Reality exists everywhere in different ways. You're virtualizing it, so you apply it to anything. So, so it's a different space.
Like films are also used for education
Yeah, but
purposes.
in films, you are the passive observer. Yeah. I mean, you're kind of just watching it and maybe reacting to it. In virtual reality, you can actually be a part of the immersive experience, especially more so with HoloLens. So, I mean, that kind of gives you the, I mean, you are, so you are the part of the whole experience and you can control a fair amount of it. So that's how it's different.
So it's basically the Awesome Game Studio from Hyderabad.
This is Rajat Oja, CEO of the Awesome Game Studio. I'm really sorry I couldn't be there. I really wanted to, but because of prior commitment, I just couldn't be there. My bad, because I know it's quite a grand event. So the Awesome Game Studio is focusing a lot on VR these days. One of the big news is that we are producing a live-action 3D VR movie with one of the biggest producers in India. And that's going to be one of those very few globally, which is like absolutely 3D VR movie. And it would be really nice, if I could actually present that few shots and, the tips and tricks about those, but probably later. And at the same time, we recently rolled out our theme park in Dubai, which showcases VR in a big way. We did contents for that, and right now we're working with another park in Dubai and one more in Australia. And at the same time, we are taking VR into heritage properties and some more.
So we'll close the session, and thank you very much. I hope it's been a good day. We've worked very hard to curate the sessions in the past 2 months. And thank you very much for sharing this amazing amount of knowledge with us. And thank you everyone here. Thank you.